Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Efrem Graham. Ahead today, Israel raiding Hamas General Security Headquarters and is considering flooding the Hamas tunnel network in Gaza. Israel charging Hamas with sexual violence against women during the October 7th surprise attacks, as officials say female hostages have been abused as well. American Jews, traditionally considered politically liberal, now feeling abandoned by their allies, as many on the left have supported Palestinians and not Israel after the Hamas attacks. And amid the threats against Jews and people of faith, how one group is using artificial intelligence to stop gunmen in their tracks. All those stories and more are ahead today on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin this half hour in Israel, where the military has raided Hamas's general security and may flood the Hamas tunnel network in Gaza. Israel's actions come amid a growing outcry against Hamas for using sexual violence against women as a weapon of war. Israel leveling that charge against Hamas at the United Nations Monday. Chris Mitchell brings us this look at the developments in Israel's war against terror from Jerusalem.
The IDF says its fight against Hamas is expanding.
As we expand our operation in Gaza, we remain committed to our goals: secure the release of our hostages and dismantle Hamas. We will operate as we have done until now, according to international law.
While condemning Hamas's strategy of using Gazans as human shields, the IDF says its goal is to help civilians get out of harm's way.
We are giving precise instructions to Gazan residents near Hamas centers of gravity, urging them to temporarily move away from the danger that Hamas puts them in. We're dropping leaflets with QR codes that opens a map guiding Gazans to safer areas.
The IDF continues to destroy hundreds of Hamas tunnels. The Wall Street Journal reports Israel is considering flooding the underground network with seawater, pumped from the Mediterranean to drive Hamas fighters out into the open. In other action in the region, U.S. forces attacked Iranian-backed militants in Iraq, suspected of planning an attack on U.S. troops, killing 5 of them. At the UN on Monday, the Israeli embassy sponsored a special session calling for condemnation of Hamas for using sexual violence against Israeli women on October 7th. Israeli Ambassador Gilad Erdan said there has been deafening silence from the UN, which waited too long, 8 weeks, to condemn the tactics. The Israeli group Physicians for Human Rights says the sexual atrocities were widespread.
We know this from eyewitnesses. We know this from combat paramedics. We would know this from some victims if more had been allowed to live. Maybe then one would be standing beside me right here to state something that should not need to be stated. Rape should never be used as an act of war.
Keynote speaker Sheryl Sandberg, the former COO of Facebook, condemned the use of sexual violence. Hamas said the accusations were unfounded lies to demonize Palestinian resistance.
The world has to decide who to believe. Do we believe the Hamas spokesperson who said that rape is forbidden, therefore it couldn't have possibly happened on October 7th? Or do we believe the women whose bodies tell us how they spent the last minutes of their lives? Who are we going to believe?
About a dozen Israeli women are still held hostage by Hamas. One U.S. official said the terror group might be unwilling to release them because they might talk about abuse they've experienced in captivity.
Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. Chris, the issue of how Hamas assaulted women on October 7th has gotten a lot of attention, and some officials in Israel and the U.S. are saying Hamas has apparently abused women they're holding hostage. Here's what the State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said Monday. Let's take a listen.
The fact that they continue to hold women hostages, the fact that they continue to hold children hostages, the fact that it seems one of the reasons they don't want to turn women over that they've been holding hostage, and the reason this pause fell apart, is they don't want those women to be able to talk about what happened to them during their time in custody.
Chris, what can you tell us about this and about what Israel has learned about how Hamas has treated women?
Well, it's really horrific, Ephraim. One woman put it this way, that Israeli women were murdered twice. They were raped and then they were murdered. They were shot in sensitive parts of their body. And some reports are really too sensitive to repeat here on television. Hamas denies it has any women or children left. Right now, Israel says it had about 15 women and 2 children in captivity. But what Hamas did really is something that these women yesterday were just highlighting, and something that the UN really hadn't been able to share for almost 2 months.
What's the latest on Israel's offensive in Gaza?
Well, right now they've surrounded Jabalia camp. That's in northern Gaza, and they've destroyed some of the terrorist infrastructure there. There's also action in the north with Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen, and it's important not to forget those hotspots that could expand to a regional war. Even yesterday, there seems to be an airstrike in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, and I think it's a signal to the Houthis about what they're doing to sea traffic in the Red Sea, in effect trying to have a de facto naval blockade on Israeli sea traffic in the Red Sea.
As you reported, the word is Israel plans to flood the network of tunnels in Gaza. How would that work, and what would it accomplish?
Well, Ephraim, right now, apparently Israel's already built 5 pumping stations. They've completed that sometime last month, and they could pump thousands of gallons of water per hour and then flood the tunnels within weeks. That would be an attempt to drive Hamas out of those tunnels and perhaps drive some of those hostages out, too, into the open. So far, the IDF has discovered about 800 tunnels. They've destroyed about 500 so far. The U.S., in terms of these flooding the tunnels, is asking what kind of impact they're going to have on the environment. So far, Israel apparently hasn't decided to implement the plan or not. One expert says that Hamas has likely built several layers of tunnels, and they learned this from the conflict in 2021. So Hamas did to dig deeper, use reinforced concrete, and some of these lower levels, they'd be used for living quarters, logistics centers, and even for storing weapons.
Chris, news stories from Israel are giving more indication Israeli intelligence had advance warning of the October 7th attacks, but didn't take them seriously. What can you tell us about that, and how big of an issue is that with the Israeli public?
It's a huge issue, Ephraim, very big, because of the Israeli public has really lost trust in the IDF. After October 7th, the IDF was sort of the barrier to protect civilians here in Israel. And so there's a loss of trust, and they really want to know who's responsible. So far, it's uncertain how far up the chain of command it went. But The Guardian is reporting that actually spies may have helped set up the October 7th massacre. They had detailed map with sources inside Israel. And then there's been these reports of the IDF detailing what Hamas wanted to do and what was training to do. But apparently, people in the higher echelons of the IDF or intelligence dismissed those warnings.
Israel's National Security Council has raised the threat level for Jews in 80 countries and is issuing travel warnings for countries around the world, including the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. How are Israelis reacting to increasing anti-Semitism worldwide?
Well, right now, Israelis here are concerned about that. But not only Israelis, but Jews worldwide, they're reacting to this anti-Semitism. You know, this is a different world after October 7th. That was a game changer. The threat level, as you mentioned in that report, is raised in 80 countries. And people recommended to refrain from being identified as Israeli or even Jewish. They stay away from demonstrations and to be alert. And I'll read something here right now, Ephraim, which I think is emblematic. This is actually from Sheryl Sandberg that we had in that report. And this kind of, I think, expresses how Jews are feeling around the world. She says, "I see sorrow on the faces of Jews. In my imagination, we all begin to look like those black and white photographs from family albums, books, walls of Holocaust museums. A time machine has somehow sucked us back into an era we thought we left behind. We can't seem to wake up from this nightmare that we're living in." And I think that expresses how a lot of Jews are feeling here in Israel and around the world, why it's really important for Christians, I believe, to be praying, supporting our Jewish brothers and sisters.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so much, Chris Mitchell, reporting from Jerusalem. Remind you that we here at CBN News back at home are praying for you, the entire team there. Coming up, feeling abandoned. Jews in America have traditionally been liberal and voted Democratic, but now, with so much of the left supporting Palestinians and not Israel, following the October 7th attacks, many Jews in this country are feeling abandoned by the same people they considered their allies. We're going to have this story for you when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch.
Download the CBN News app. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Watch CBN News Channel Live. CBN News. Because truth matters. Get the CBN News app today.
The vast majority of Jews in America are considered politically liberal, but since Hamas's brutal attacks on October 7th against Israel, many liberal Jews feel abandoned and betrayed by those they had considered ideological friends. CBN's chief political analyst David Brody is on this story.
One major result of the Hamas attack and subsequent war in Gaza has been an alarming rise in anti-Semitism, notably from the left in America.
Palestine will never die!
From student groups on college campuses.
Go back to Poland! Go back to Germany!
To Jews attacked at rallies. With groups like Democratic Socialists of America promoting pro-Hamas rallies, it's left progressive Jews wondering what's going on in their world.
To be clear, you are not a feminist if you can't feel for the Israeli civilian women, children, and babies who were murdered. And so I'm very angry about what I'm hearing.
This week, we entered the upside-down world when a retrograde, regressive, totalitarian, misogynistic, messianic, terrorist regime became, for the time being, the hero of the left. How could it be?
It shouldn't come as a complete surprise. A Harvard-Harris poll shows 36% of liberals see the Hamas attack on Israeli civilians as justified. Among 18 to 24-year-olds, a majority, 51%, say the killings could be justified. Overall, Gallup shows Democrats are more sympathetic to the Palestinians than the Israelis, 49% versus 38%. Democrat strategists like Joel Rubin believe if the left abandons progressive Jews who love Israel, there will be a political price.
If you kick out the Jews from the Jews who care about Israel from progressive coalitions, these progressive coalitions will have no political power, and they will go down the rabbit hole of looking like anti-Semites. One should be able to support Israel and being Jewish and still be progressive. But that is now becoming a litmus test in progressive coalitions.
Historically, anti-Semitism has existed worldwide in these circles.
The National Socialist Nazi Party, they were left of center. You know, the textbook definition of socialism is the state controls the means of production and distribution. And that is what Hitler advocated.
Today, liberal Jews break bread with the left on issues of abortion, gay and transgender rights, as well as overall social justice. A split grows, however, between the left and Israeli-supporting Jews when it comes to defending Palestinians and terrorists.
I am somewhat shocked that people would embrace Hamas, because there's nothing progressive about Hamas, right? This idea you have queers for Hamas or feminists for Hamas when they would kill these people or, force them not to drive or not to work if they're women is just bizarre.
Caroline Glick, contributing editor for the Jewish News Syndicate, sees that leading liberal Jews to fight back.
You're seeing a lot of Jews who major donors to universities, pulling their donations, quitting boards and other major institutions because they're suddenly realizing that they've been giving many millions of dollars to institutions that have become institutionally anti-Semitic.
It's a growing dynamic that progressive Jews may find they have to push through the pain in order to confront. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Still ahead, with attacks against Jews and other people of faith and other Americans on the rise, one group is using artificial intelligence to stop gunmen in their tracks. We're going to tell you and bring you a look at how ZeroEyes is using AI to protect synagogues, churches, and schools from mass shooters. We've got the story right after this. Last Friday, 15 synagogues in New York City received fake bomb threats designed to harass and intimidate worshipers. Attacks against Jews and other religious groups are on the rise. That's why a company co-founded by former U.S. Navy SEAL is using artificial intelligence to protect places of worship and schools from violence. CBN's Billy Hallowell has the story.
As concern grows over mass shootings, ZeroEyes co-founder Rob Huberty says his company is using artificial intelligence to protect potential targets like schools and houses of worship.
So what we do is we take your existing video cameras, that's what we need to use, and we process every frame by frame, every image, every video feed that you have that are your cameras, we don't install anything. And we use our AI that goes over them, and what it does is it looks for guns that are exposed.
Within seconds, ZeroEyes pinpoints the types of guns being brandished and alerts first responders about the nature of potential threats, as well as the types of weapons assailants might have. Dominic Iacco at Lansing Catholic High School in Michigan says this can offer peace of mind to his school community.
My initial reaction was basically, how can we not do this? When you look at kind of the tragic history of these types of scenarios and you see the advantage of the response time that ZeroEyes gives you, as an administrator of a school, obviously you never want something like this to ever happen, but you also want to know that you've done everything possible to make the school as safe as possible.
Matt Montana, safety director at Valley Baptist Church in Bakersfield, California, agrees.
People want to do us harm. And when I say us, I mean men and women of the Christian faith. Not only the faith-based communities. For whatever reasons, because we live in a broken world, there's a lot of sin out there, and the innocence is preyed upon.
His church is preparing to roll out ZeroEyes, and Montana, who worked for years in law enforcement, says the real-time intelligence can help mitigate threats and save lives.
What we're doing here, that in itself may deter somebody who has thoughts of doing harm to people at Valley Baptist Church.
While Huberty is fully aware of privacy concerns regarding AI, he says his company has intentional safeguards in place.
We view ourselves not as the total solution, but as a layer that makes sense. There's no predictive analytics. We're just looking for an object, which is a gun. We're just trying to be the best in the world at seeing guns and trying to give that information to first responders and those who can do something about it first.
With mass shootings and acts of violence increasingly directed at synagogues, churches, and faith-based schools, ZeroEyes is offering a viable option for leaders looking to increase protections. Billy Hallowell, CBN News.
Coming up, if you're like most Americans, you find it's easy to put on those extra pounds over the holidays, but with a little planning, you can avoid putting on that unwanted weight and still enjoy those holiday treats. We're going to bring you some tips when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. You will not be surprised to learn studies show most Americans gain unwanted weight between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day, but you can avoid those extra pounds and still enjoy all those holiday goodies. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson shows us how following some simple recommendations can help you out.
Health experts say the secret to enjoying holiday treats in moderation involves filling up on healthy food.
That means focusing on protein like beans, chicken, and fish, or a low-sugar protein shake, which can help reduce the urge to overindulge elsewhere.
Protein is the macronutrient that curbs hunger hormones most.
Vegetables also naturally make us feel full and contain nutrients that help manage hunger hormones. A good rule of thumb is to fill half your plate with vegetables.
I personally love arugula. I eat it practically every day. And 1 cup of arugula is 2 to 5 calories. but has 30 vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants.
Depending on your plans, pack some healthier snacks like nuts, fruit, and hard-boiled eggs. The idea is to not get too hungry.
That in and of itself can result in consuming way more calories than you otherwise would.
At dinners or parties, choose mostly healthy items, or when possible, bring one.
If you're invited to a holiday event, you don't have to bring a dessert. You can bring something healthy that you want to eat so that way, if everyone's putting out their items on the table, you'll know that there's at least one thing that's healthy.
Consider healthy holiday swaps like peppermint tea instead of peppermint candy, dark chocolate instead of fudge, and chopped apple with cinnamon and raisins instead of cookies.
It's all about the swaps, right? We don't want to deprive ourselves of anything, especially around the holidays. So it's really just about figuring out what it is that you like and then coming up with a healthier alternative.
Well-meaning friends and family can often encourage you to eat more of your favorite foods during the holidays, so a tactful response can preserve the relationship and your waistline.
Kind of preparing yourself with a healthy, happy, no thank you, or the dish looks great, but I'm full, it's been a delight. So learning how to politely say no can be very engaging during a holiday party without being overbearing or insulting.
Finally, research shows stress can cause us to crave unhealthy foods, so experts recommend doing things that can reduce anxiety, like getting plenty of sleep, exercise, and time spent in prayer. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. I share this message with you in hopes that you will post, tag, tweet, and share it with those in your circles of influence. How big is your God? Be careful not to tie the hand of God with your limited thinking. Be steady in your faith in His ability and watch His suddenly response to your steady faith. With that word, I encourage you to make this a terrific Tuesday and be sure to have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. That will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. Take a moment. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us. That address is newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and join us right back here same time tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless.